The crack of the leather whip tore through the still morning air like a thunderclap, but Cordelia Hayes didn't scream. Blood welled and slid down her bare back, but she kept her head high. Her emerald eyes blazed with defiance that only deepened the fury on Mayor Edmund Carver's face. She was tied to a whipping post in Copper Ridge's town square, a spectacle made for punishment, but she refused to look broken. "This," Carver declared, his voice sharp and theatrical, "is what happens to women who forget their place." His voice echoed over the dusty ground, stirring a nervous ripple through the crowd of townsfolk gathering around. "Miss Hayes has rejected a fine, respectable marriage proposal from Mr. Silas Murdoch. Not once, not twice, but 3 times." Cordelia's wrists were raw where the ropes bit into them, her tattered dress clinging to her body, exposing the fresh welts across her shoulders. The entire town watched, some with pity, some with silent contempt, and a few with quiet, cruel satisfaction. But Cordelia refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "Perhaps," Carver said, turning toward his deputy with a smug nod, "another reminder will help her remember her duties." The deputy, grim-faced and sweating despite the chill in the air, raised the whip again. Old Mrs. Patterson covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide with horror. Young Jimmy Reeves looked like he might throw up. Even some of the men shifted uncomfortably, but no one dared speak. Not when the mayor controlled their land, their jobs, their futures. Silas Murdoch stood at the edge of the crowd with his thick arms folded over his barrel chest, smug and self-assured. At 45, he was the wealthiest cattleman in the territory and a man who believed everything, including people, could be bought. He looked at Cordelia as if she were already his. "You can end this now, girl." Murdoch called out, voice gravel rough. "Say yes, and I'll have you cleaned up. I'll even buy you a new dress for the wedding." Cordelia's only response was to spit at the ground near his boots. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Even Carver looked stunned. No woman had ever defied them this publicly. "Stubborn as a damn mule," Carver muttered, his face twisting with rage. 5 more lashes. The deputy hesitated, uncertain. Then, just as he raised the whip again, a sound broke the morning silence, the rhythmic clip-clop of hooves echoing from the main road. Heads turned. The crowd parted. Out of the morning mist came a lone rider, tall in the saddle, moving like a man born to command. The way he sat that horse, the black stallion's reins loose in his gloved hands, spoke of quiet danger. Thaddeus Rockwell had come to Copper Ridge. He swung down in one smooth motion, boots hitting the dirt with a metallic jingle of spurs. 6'2", broad-shouldered, sun-browned and scarred, he moved with the calm focus of a man who had seen war and walked out the other side. The townsfolk fell silent as he strode forward. Whispers caught in their throats. Everyone in Montana Territory knew his name, Rockwell, the war hero, the rancher, the man who'd once killed 17 Confederate soldiers with nothing but a saber and sheer fury. Carver puffed up his chest. "This is official town business, Mr. Rockwell. Nothing that concerns you." Thaddeus stopped 10 feet from the post. His steel-gray eyes flicked over Cordelia's broken body, the shame in the crowd's eyes, and the smugness dripping from Murdoch's grin. His jaw tensed. "Cut her down," he said. The words were quiet, but they hit like cannon fire. Carver turned red. "She's rejected a lawful contract. Mr. Murdoch has paid good money. You're selling women now?" Thaddeus asked, deadly calm. Murdoch stepped forward, puffed up like a rooster. "Her father owed me, took credit against my cattle, died before paying me back. She works it off through marriage or service." Thaddeus took a single step toward him. Murdoch flinched. "Other means?" Thaddeus asked, voice low and dangerous. "You mean indentured servitude? 7 years, like property?" Murdoch's confidence wavered. "Marriage is the kinder option." Cordelia, bloodied and barely conscious, still found strength to speak. "My father never borrowed from you, you lying snake." The crowd murmured. Something was shifting. The air felt heavier. Thaddeus moved in. "What's your name?" he asked her gently. "Cordelia Hayes," she whispered, surprised by the warmth in his voice. "Did your father owe this man money?" "No, sir. Papa died of fever. Never owed no one anything. Thaddeus turned toward Carver and Murdoch again. His voice, now cold as the mountains, carried like a war drum. Cut her down. You don't have authority here, Carver blurted. Thaddeus's hand dropped to the grip of his Colt .45. Your authority ends where my conscience begins. And my conscience says this ends now. The deputy looked like he was about to faint. Sweat poured from his brow. But Murdoch, his pride pricked, grabbed for his gun. So, did his hired men. Bad idea, Thaddeus said, almost kindly. The clock tower began to strike 8. The first shot came so fast, most didn't see him draw. Murdoch's fastest gunman hit the ground howling, clutching his shattered shoulder. Screams erupted. Mothers ran for cover. Children ducked behind wagons. Thaddeus fired again. Another man down, his pistol spinning from his broken wrist. The third dropped his weapon and raised his hands, face pale. Anyone else want to dance? Thaddeus asked casually. Carver was backed against the wall, shaking. You can't just shoot people in my town. Your laws are mighty selective, Thaddeus growled, keeping his Colt aimed squarely at Murdoch. Draw or drop it. Murdoch, sweating bullets, slowly raised his hands. All his arrogance drained away. Thaddeus turned to Cordelia, reached up, and sliced through her ropes. She fell, her legs buckling. But he caught her, holding her with a gentleness that didn't match the deadly fire in his eyes. You're safe now, he murmured. My back, she whispered through clenched teeth. I know, he said. We'll get you taken care of. He turned to the crowd, still frozen. Get Doc Morrison. No one moved, until Thaddeus barked again, his voice cracking like thunder. Young Jimmy Reeves bolted like the devil was on his heels. Murdoch finally found his voice, though it was barely a croak. You just made a powerful enemy, Rockwell. I've got friends in the government. They'll hunt you down. Thaddeus helped Cordelia to her feet. Then I'll give them a damn good reason to remember my name. He turned to Carver, voice cutting like a blade. This woman is under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me. As the doctor came running, no one noticed a lone rider on the hilltop above town, wheeling his horse and galloping toward the county seat. Trouble was coming. Later, in Doc Morrison's office, Cordelia gritted her teeth as the old man cleaned the wounds on her back. The sound of hammering echoed from outside as shopkeepers boarded windows. Copper Ridge was preparing for war. These cuts will heal, the doctor said, rubbing ointment into the deepest lash marks. But the scars, those will stay with her. Thaddeus stood at the window, eyes scanning the horizon, gun always within reach. How long before she can travel? He asked, still watching the street. Travel? Cordelia sat up, flinching. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. Not anymore, Thaddeus said, finally turned to face her. She met his eyes, cold, clear, and unflinchingly honest. Murdoch wasn't bluffing. By nightfall, there'll be marshals crawling through this town, and they'll all have my name on a warrant. What about his name? Doc Morrison asked. What about his crimes? Thaddeus gave a bitter smile. Men like Murdoch don't get warrants. They write them. Cordelia straightened. I won't run. I won't let them take my home. Then you'll die here, Thaddeus said quietly. And that's not something I'm willing to let happen. The room went quiet again, filled only with the weight of a choice that would change both their lives forever. Because that's exactly what's going to happen if you stay. Thaddeus's voice had that cold, unwavering steel again, and before Cordelia could even process it, the door burst open. Young Jimmy Reeves tumbled in, breathless, red-faced from sprinting through town. Mr. Rockwell, riders, South Road, a whole bunch of 'em. Through the dusty window pane, the rising plume of dirt confirmed it. At least a dozen riders, fast and closing in. Damn it, Thaddeus muttered, checking his pocket watch. Faster than I thought. He turned to Cordelia, who was struggling to ease a shredded, blood-stained dress over her bandaged torso. Her face was pale, her breath labored, but her eyes hadn't lost their fire. We got 10 minutes. Maybe less. His voice was flat now. War-tempered. You've got to decide. Stay and die with whatever honor this town pretends to have left. Or leave with me. Unknown future. But at least you'll have one. Cordelia stared at him. This stranger who had risked his life to protect her, who had walked into a town with a gun on his hip and fire in his gut, and stood between her and the men who thought they owned her. What I want to know, she asked quietly, is why? Why did you help me? You don't even know me. Thaddeus was already moving, pulling medicine, bandages, and ammunition from Doc Morrison's cabinet. His voice was soft, almost distant. Sometimes a man sees something that reminds him why he's still breathing. Sometimes that's enough. The old doctor tied the last of the bandages with trembling fingers and handed over a bundle of supplies. There's a back trail, he said, through Miller's Canyon. If you ride hard, you'll hit the territorial line by sundown. And then what? Cordelia snapped, the pain and fear finally cracking through her voice. Where do I go? I've got no money, no family, nothing. You've got me, Thaddeus replied simply. The words landed like a thunderclap, weighty and terrifying and full of something she hadn't dared to feel in a long time. Hope. The sound of galloping hooves grew louder. Dust streaked the sky, outside like smoke from a coming fire. She could already hear the orders being shouted out front. Marshal Kane had arrived. Thaddeus held out his hand. Live free, or die here. Decide. Cordelia looked from his hand, to Doc Morrison's anxious face, to the window where the first of the riders crested the hill, silhouettes against the sun. Then, with a breath that tasted like the edge of a cliff, she grabbed Thaddeus's hand. They slipped out the back of the doctor's office just as the federal marshals thundered into Main Street, their badges catching the sunlight like polished knives. In the narrow alley, Thaddeus's black stallion waited, snorting and stomping with impatience. Beside him stood a smaller mare, Doc's emergency ride. Can you ride? He asked, boosting her toward the saddle. Cordelia clenched her teeth, her back a searing scream of pain. Born on horseback, she hissed, her face gray with the effort. Shouting erupted behind them, Kane's booming voice demanding Rockwell be turned over. Doc Morrison played the part of the confused old man perfectly, claiming to have seen nothing but dust and wounded backs. Thaddeus swung into his saddle and nodded once. Stay low. Stay close. They moved like shadows behind buildings, ducking between back alleys, and keeping the horses to soft dirt. But just as they rounded the livery stable, a shout rang out. There! Behind Murphy's barn. Ride! Thaddeus barked. Cordelia dug her heels into the mare's flanks. Pain lanced up her spine with every hoofbeat, but she didn't dare look back. Behind them, the thunder of pursuit shook the ground. Gunshots cracked through the air. Bullets whistled past her ears. Keep moving, Thaddeus shouted. Miller's Canyon. There's a choke point ahead. They'll have to go single file. The trail narrowed between canyon walls, towering cliffs of red rock closing in on either side. Veins of quartz glinted in the sun, momentarily blinding. Dust hung in the air, kicked up by the horses, thick as smoke from a fire. Cordelia glanced over her shoulder. Marshal Kane was close, too close, at the head of a line of 6 men, faces grim, guns drawn. How far to the border? She called, gasping. 5 miles through the canyon. 10 more over open ground, Thaddeus replied, if the horses hold. Cordelia's mare was already faltering, sides heaving, legs trembling. Even Thaddeus's black beast was showing signs of wear from the desperate flight. I need to tell you something, she called, breath ragged. Murdoch? He wasn't lying about everything. Thaddeus looked back, sharp. What? My father did owe money. Just not to him, to the man leading that posse. She didn't have to say his name. Marshal Kane. The realization hit like a blow to the chest. This wasn't justice. It wasn't even revenge. It was collection. Kane wasn't chasing a fugitive. He was reclaiming his property. How much? Thaddeus asked, as they guided their exhausted mounts around a bend strewn with loose rock. 500, Cordelia said, guilt thick in her voice. Papa borrowed it last winter when the fever hit. Lost half our cattle. He meant to repay it after spring roundup, but he didn't make it. Thaddeus finished. His jaw tightened. The puzzle came together in one ugly, horrifying picture. Cain and Murdoch had been partners all along, using the law like a branding iron to own people. Cordelia had just been another asset to them. How many others? Thaddeus muttered. How many women taken the same way? The sound of hooves behind them was louder now. The canyon that had once protected them was a trap. Cain knew every twist and crevice. We gotta get out of here, Thaddeus growled, eyes scanning the walls. There! Cordelia pointed left, to a barely visible trail etched into stone. My papa used to take me hunting up there. It leads to the mesa. Thaddeus eyed the path. It looked like a death sentence. Narrow, steep, and crumbling in places. That's not a trail. It's a damn gamble. It's better than whatever Cain's planning. A bullet struck the canyon wall beside Thaddeus's head, sending rock chips flying. He didn't argue again. Go! He barked, turning his stallion hard. Cordelia spurred her mare, teeth clenched against the fresh agony in her back. The slope was murderous, loose shale underfoot, cliffs rising and falling to either side. Every step was a prayer. The mare slipped, caught herself, slipped again. But she didn't fall. Don't look down, Thaddeus told himself, though he wasn't sure if the warning was for her or him. They were halfway up when the real terror came. Cain and his men had started to climb behind them, risking their lives just as recklessly. Cain's voice rose like smoke through the canyon. You're trapped, Rockwell. Surrender the girl, and maybe I'll let you live. Thaddeus's answer was a bullet that whistled within inches of Cain's head, sending him diving for cover. Message received, no surrender. Cordelia's breath was coming in short, strangled gasps. Blood soaked through her bandages, her shirt clinging to her skin. I can't, she whimpered. I can't go any farther. You can, Thaddeus said, forcing his stallion forward. You have to. Almost there. The mesa rim came into view just as the sun dipped below the canyon's edge, setting the sky on fire. Gold and crimson stretched across the horizon, the prairie rolling endlessly into the distance. But there was no time to marvel. Cain's posse was still climbing, and the mesa offered no shelter. What now? Cordelia asked, swaying in the saddle. Thaddeus scanned the horizon. 8 miles of open plain to the territorial line, and the horses were on their last legs. Then he saw it, north, 2 miles away, thin trails of smoke rising from a hidden cluster of buildings, the Paiute trading post. Most white folk like to pretend it didn't exist. But Thaddeus had been there. He'd traded with them, fought beside them during a cattle raid the year before. He'd earned their respect, and maybe, just maybe, their help. He looked at Cordelia. Can you make 2 more miles? He asked Cordelia softly, his voice low but urgent. She sat straighter in her saddle. Even though every breath came with a fresh surge of pain, her spine rigid with determination. Lead the way, she whispered. They rode hard across the mesa, the horses' hooves pounding against dry earth, their silhouettes etched against the sky burning orange with the dying sun. Behind them, Cain's furious voice echoed like thunder. I'll follow you to hell itself, Rockwell. That woman belongs to me. But Thaddeus didn't look back. Up ahead, the trading post rose out of fading light like a mirage. Sturdy buildings surrounded by a split-rail fence, smoke curling from stone chimneys, the flicker of lamplight dancing behind window glass, the promise of safety, or at least a pause in the storm. As they thundered into the clearing, armed figures emerged from doorways and shadow porches, rifles in hand. Voices shouted in Paiute, then one rang out in accented English. Who comes? Thaddeus Rockwell, he called out, reining in his stallion and lifting his hand in a peaceful gesture, seeking sanctuary for the woman. By the old laws. A tall man stepped from the main lodge, his silver-streaked hair tied back, his lined face carved by both age and battle. Joseph Crowfeather, war chief of the Paiute and a man who owed Thaddeus his life. My brother returns, Joseph said, his voice calm, a faint smile playing across his lips. But not in peace. Federal marshals are 10 minutes behind us, Thaddeus said, helping Cordelia down. They want her for a debt she never owed. Joseph's eyes narrowed. He'd seen the sharp edge of white man law too many times, seen how it bent to serve the wealthy and crush the poor. He nodded once. Bring her inside. We'll talk. Cordelia tried to walk on her own, but her legs trembled beneath her. Thaddeus steadied her, holding her upright as they followed Joseph into the main lodge. The scent of smoke and herbs filled the room. Warmth, shelter, and the unspoken promise of fight, if anyone dared breach it. Joseph glanced at the blood staining her shirt. She is wounded. She's under my protection, Thaddeus replied, the words slipping out before he could even think. Joseph only nodded. Same thing. Moments later, the ground began to tremble with hooves. Cain had arrived. Through the window, Thaddeus saw the lawman's men spreading out, forming a noose of steel around a trading post. You're harboring fugitives. Cain shouted, By order of the territorial governor, I demand you surrender them. Joseph stepped out alone, a dozen Paiute warriors behind him, each one painted for war, their eyes calm and ready. This is sovereign land, Joseph replied coolly. Your laws stop at my fence. Cain's lip curled. Don't quote treaties to me, chief. I've got warrants, signed by the governor himself. Joseph tilted his head. Show me. Silence. Thaddeus, watching from the doorway, understood the pause. Cain had no such warrants. This was never official. It was personal. He'd chase them with hatred, not justice. I don't need to show you anything. Cain barked. You got 1 hour. Then we come in and take them. But Joseph Crowfeather had stared down worse men than Cain. The U.S. Army had once tried to break him, and failed. He turned and walked back inside, without another word. The standoff began. All night, Cain's men surrounded the post, rifles at the ready. Inside, Joseph's warriors stood vigil, unmoving. Neither side made the first move. The dark sky hung heavy with tension, a single spark away from turning to flame. Cordelia slept fitfully on a pile of buffalo hides, her wounds carefully dressed by Joseph's wife with a mix of herbs and whispered songs. Her face, even in sleep, remained taut with pain and something deeper, fear. Yet beside her, Thaddeus never moved from the window, rifle across his lap, his mind racing. Joseph sat beside him as dawn neared, offering a cup of strong black coffee. There's something you should know about your Marshal Cain, he said. Thaddeus glanced over. I'm listening. 3 winters ago, he came here, demanded tribute, said we needed to pay for the right to trade with white settlers. What happened when you refused? Joseph's face hardened. He burned our winter stores, left us with nothing. Thaddeus stared at him, his stomach turning. How did you survive? We didn't. 6 elders. 4 children. They didn't make it to spring. There was a long silence between them, until Joseph added, Been waiting ever since for a chance to even the scales. Just then, Cain's voice bellowed again, cutting across the dawn-streaked sky. Time's up, Chief. Send them out, or we're coming in. Joseph stood, checked his rifle. Looks like that chance has arrived. But Thaddeus was already on his feet. No, this fight's mine. You've done more than enough. Joseph rested a hand on his shoulder. Some fights, brother, belong to all of us. Outside, Cain's men were restless, worn down by the night, hungry and wary. Some looked like they'd bolt if things went bad. Cain raised his voice one last time. I'm counting to 10. Thaddeus stepped out before he got to 3. His hands were empty. His coat, however, hung low and ready at his hip. No need for that, Cain, he said, voice calm. I'm right here. Cain's eyes lit up with triumph. Smart man. Now hand over the girl. She's gone, Thaddeus said evenly. Slipped out while you were making all that noise. Probably halfway to California by now. Cain narrowed his eyes. You're lying. Am I? Thaddeus nodded toward the rows of armed warriors, now fully visible behind the fences. You want to search every building here? Be my guest. But I can't promise Joseph's people will be so welcoming. For the first time, Cain hesitated. His men saw what he saw. This wasn't a fair fight. Not anymore. The debt still stands, he snarled. $500. plus interest. Thaddeus reached into his vest, pulled out a leather pouch, and tossed it to the ground. It hit with a heavy clink. Gold coins. Debts paid. In full. Cain looked at the pouch, then at Thaddeus. Fury twisted his face. This doesn't change anything between us. No, Thaddeus agreed, his voice like gravel. It doesn't. With nothing left to say, Cain turned his horse. One by one, his men followed. The dust of their retreat was golden in the rising sun. Inside, Cordelia sat up slowly, her green eyes clear now. Did you really pay my father's debt? Seemed like the right thing to do, Thaddeus said. $500 is a lot of money. He shrugged. I've got more land than I can ride, and no one to share it with. Money's useless if you've got no one worth spending it on. She stared at him, the silence growing thick between them. What happens now? Thaddeus looked at her for a long moment. Now we ride to my ranch. It's far. Far enough Cain won't follow. You can stay as long as you want, or until you decide where your life should go. Her voice was soft, unsure. And if I decide I want to stay forever? He smiled faintly. Then I'd better start building another room. 3 months later, Thaddeus Rockwell and Cordelia Hayes stood hand in hand beneath the wide Montana sky. They were married in a quiet ceremony at the trading post. Joseph Crow Feather performed the vows. The whole territory came to watch. Together, they built that extra room and filled it, in time, with laughter and stories. Stories of a mother who refused to be broken and a father who arrived just in time to set her free. Now go ahead, click the video on your screen. The next story carries something deeper. Not just truth, but something you'll feel in your bones. And when it ends, you won't be the same.